the UK as well. And yes, I'm a fan. I have children. I've got a beautiful wife. I've got, there's a number of things happening at the moment. Where I'm at the moment, really developing. It's been a very busy few months or years, should we say, especially with the pandemic. I currently head of procurement for some hospitals, which are in East London at the moment, so NHS, so supporting everything to do with that hospital in regards to their procurement and the supply chain. So that includes all of the pieces of equipment that people wear, their PPE, all of the systems that go in the background, managing how contracts are let, how teams are managed as well. So all through the pandemic, been in supporting, the wonderful people in the NHS, making sure that they have what they need, that patients have what they need, and that our workers have what they need, and the hospital can, respond to this pandemic. So that's what I've been doing. Also, what I do as well, I've got a number of projects which I'm working at the same time. So as he said, theatre's happening in the background, and I've also got a number of mentoring groups and people that I help specifically when they're trying to get into corporate institutions. That's what I'm doing at the moment. So you can pick one and we can talk about it.
So what we say here thank you, and thank you very much, Adrian. Thank you for that share. And it's like you are an extremely busy human being, and the reason I'm saying that with a little smile is because the leading dragon is first and foremost a human being before human doing, and this how shall I say, this profile that you've just portrayed of yourself, where you're very busy doing many projects and also doing it with such care, because you're really delivering it from a heart space, and I can feel that, and I know it's something that you're passionate about. And but first and foremost, I know that you are a human being, and you have a story. Is that, yeah? And you have a story to tell. You had something that happened a few years ago, and this is what happens, isn't it? So there's either life throws something at us, and this adversity, in every adversity there's opportunity. So we can choose how we want to handle that adversity, and how much of a teacher we would like it to be for us, for each one of us, and whether we're ready or not. Oftentimes we're not very ready, but we just try and see how we can maneuver that. So Adrian, I'm going back to your energetic space, because I know that you deliver everything that you do. You deliver from that space, from a purposeful, meaningful space. You do it with kindness, you do it with compassion, and you do it with care. And you're also a human being with your head on your shoulders. So perhaps you'd like to tell us about the story that brought you to actually perhaps bring even more meaningfulness and purpose to your life and to everything that you do.
Sure, I have a number of stories that has brought. It's one of those kaleidoscope. You have a life that's a kaleidoscope of things that bring together. But when we were talking previously, there was this one story I was telling you about an incident that happened in my life a few years ago, and especially when we were talking about courage and fears as things like that. And this really did expose a number of my fears and worries at the time. I'll start from the beginning. I remember it was a number of years back. I was going out with my children. I was actually coming back from my son's birthday party. He was his young birthday party, and we'd taken him to a place which is kind of like Bob the Builder land, so it's called Diggerland. And we'd come back, and I remember coming back, and I had my son. I had my little cousin and my son's friend in there as well. So all the young children in the car. My wife was driving another car, and that's with her, so people that come. And what unfortunately happened was I blacked out at the wheel on the way home. And I came off the road and had a very, very severe accident. People were injured, lots of things happening all at the same time, and very, very intense period of time in my life, because what happened was, when the accident happened, it was just like a blur. I don't know if you've ever seen it in the film, when things happen in slow motion and in fast motion at the same time, and you're just bewildered and you're in daze, and all of that happening at the same time. So very, very scary, very worrying. It just a blur, blacking out and then opening your eyes and seeing just the array of things that had happened on the road as a result of that. And then police are involved, and you're getting arrested, and you're being taken to a cell, and people are asking you, what happened, what did you do? I remember on the road when the accident happened, people from the area running and saying, what happened? Were you drinking? Was it drugs? Or did something run out into the road? And it was none of those. It was, simply I blacked out of the wheel. It was a really intense time, because what that happened, what led after that was that led into me being, what's the word? Everybody trying to prosecute me in regards to this accident. And it's very difficult when you're in a situation when you can't say what happened. It's a really, really difficult place to be, and so when I'm telling this story, this is bringing up a number of fears, because it's a place where you're not in control, and you're facing a number of consequences. For me, it would have been a number of years in prison as a result of this accident. And obviously I'd injured somebody, and unfortunately I'd injured an old lady in that as well. So you've got all of the guilt and shame that's around that. And a really, really intense period of time in my life. And I had to go to a number of court appearances all throughout. It's a long period of time, actually. It was for about 18 months, 20 months, a long court appearances where you're up in front of the dock, and people are trying to prosecute. The police are trying to prosecute to say that what I had done was dangerous driving, and they wanted to prosecute me to the extent of the law, which means a number of years in prison and fine and all of these things. So you can imagine all of the fears that come up in there. There's so many situations, going up in court, people talking about you and your character and things that you've done, people talking on your behalf and you can't speak. You've got barristers, all of that. You've got people saying, they want to have prosecution. They want to really, impact the law as much as possible on an individual. And that's what I was going through for a number of years. And, bringing it back to the topic about having courage over your fear. So this was highlighting a number of fears. You can list them. What's going to happen to me? How long will I, be put inside for? What will happen to my family? What will happen, job, career? What will happen to the person that was ill? Sorry, that was injured. All of these things that come into your headspace, and so through this period of time, it was a really intense, worrying period. To say what it's like to go up to court, to go to court in a number of places. You can go to magistrates. You can go to like a high court. All of these different types of courts, and I ended up actually in a Crown Court because it kept getting higher and higher. The charges kept getting higher and higher, and I ended up in Crown Court to go for a trial. Very, very intense trial. In fact, the people that were in that court before me were the people that had done a massive diamond heist in the UK. And so that was all in the press as well. So you imagine the extent of, walking into that type of court, you're behind a screen and people are talking about you and you've got a jury and all of these different things. So very, very, very intense time that I went through. And the reason why I'm talking about this is because, all of the fears that are associated to that can come up in a number of people's lives. Different things about, being judged, consequence of your actions, what your future looks like, how your family is going to survive. All of these things, you don't necessarily need to go to court, but you can still have those fears within your mind. Is this the end of me type of thing? Having nightmares and all of that. Why am I here? What was the whole point of all of this? So I
was just going to say, and all of that in the public eye.
Absolutely. It's strange, as you said, in the public eye, when you see newspaper reports of, there's this accident and somebody being charged, and that's in there. And so very intense, still all through that, you've got to live life. You've got your children going to school, you've got work that you've got to do, you've got family to maintain. You don't know where you're going to be at Christmas, you don't know where you're going to be at the birthdays and all of these things like that. So very emotional, and because a lot of it is out of your control. You're in a situation and it's like people talking about you. Yeah, carry on.
Yeah, I'm just, first of all, Adrian, thank you so much for sharing. This is quite an extreme, experience. And also it was long in time. We're talking about years that you were in this situation of insecurity, of uncertainty, of no visibility and no guarantee of what the outcome would be.
Absolutely right. And you know what? And that is a big worry, because, when we go into circumstances or we're involved in and we don't know what the outcome is, but lots of things could happen. And that is where fears come up. What will happen to me? I don't want to go to prison. What will happen to my family? Will you lose a house? Will you lose an income? What will happen to my children? I don't want to spend a period of time without my children. I want to be there. I'm a father. That's, I love my children. I need to be present. You have things about your reputation. You have things about just ongoing, lots of things that come out as a result of, a prosecution and a conviction, of these things like that, which a lot of people unfortunately have to go through. And I think that it brings up a lot of fear, and there were absolutely times when, you're depressed, you're worried, you're crying, sometimes you're elated, sometimes but there's all of these mixed emotions that you go through, and as I said, it doesn't have to be like an extreme event like this, but you can go through life like that as well.
Sorry, Adrian, I think there's a little bit of there's some time lapse between me and you, so I'm sometimes speaking over you when I don't intend to. I'd like to, we're talking about fear, and ultimately, like you said, we can go through life living this low-level fear space without even, subconsciously, without even really realizing it. And that this fear space where we operate from, then it has a direct impact on the decisions that we make, on our behavior, on the conversations that we have, on the relationships that we have, and how we move forward in our lives. And
Absolutely.
and this is ultimately it is a choice, isn't it? It's a choice. We can choose whether we want to continue as we normally do in our comfort zone, or actually break through that. And often we say, don't we, that change happens not when we want it to happen, but when we need it to happen. So Adrian, I'd like to go back to that time, that very intense and fearful time that you lived over a long period. How did that fear? I imagine sometimes that fear was quite palpable for you. What was it like, and what was your relationship with it?
That's a really good question. So if we're talking about what was a relationship with fear, then yeah, I think that what was I going back at that time? And do you know what? It's still palpable. I can still feel it. I'm not going to lie. What was it like at that time? An intense worry. I think that. How did it affect me? It was difficult to plan because you don't know where you are. It actually affects a number of things in your life. So, you're thinking about, what do I do with my job where I'm working? Or you think about things like, can I travel? Things like going on a holiday. I had to consider, because I was actually on bail for that period of time as well. So some places might not accept me. I remember I had a number of happening at the same time. And it seems so even where I was acting, I had to travel. I was traveling. I was doing some theatre across, which was broad, and that was in Caribbean and also in Canada as well. I remember planning, and so you've got things in the back of your mind constantly, and I think that your fears are like these kind of bags or clothes that you've put on, and you're wearing them all the time. And what we don't realize as well, the thing about this relationship with fear is some of the fears that we have been sewn into us earlier in our life, or the worry. And until you're put into a situation, you don't actually see the fruit of that. And so, it's like when two people come together in a relationship, until they're brought together in a relationship, and maybe they have children, what have you, you don't realize all the things that you've got sewn into you from your parents, or from the world, or from your life and things like that. And fear is like that, because we pick up things, unfortunately, through our lives and through our experiences, our own personality, and how we interpret things as well. And so fear has a relationship with all human life, I think. But it's about now trying to overcome those fears, address those fears. Because again, how does it affect your life? It can be very arresting, fear. It has a paralytic effect on your decisions, relationships, because you don't know what the outcome is. There's so many things, and you have to make a decision. As you said, part of fear is a decision whether or not it's going to affect everything. Because if you let it out of control, fear can really, as I said, paralyze so many areas of somebody's life.
Wow. Do you know, Adrian?
And
yeah, I there's just such a lapse. I just wanted to say that these are serious golden nuggets that you're sharing here, because you're talking about fear, seeds of fear that have been sown since we're very small. So when we think about it, so when we're babies, fresh, vulnerable, pure, perfect babies born into this world, well, we're born in an environment with adults around us. and all their subconscious is sort of seeping into our subconscious, because especially as babies, we're like sponges, right? So all those seeds of fear are being sown into us at such a young age. I mean, I don't even know how young. I mean, maybe we're talking the first few days already. Who knows? I don't know if there's any science that's been researched around that.
Yeah.
But then what you also shared is that, but actually you don't know anything about these seeds, or if you've been watering them, cultivating them, until something big happens. And typically when we're fully conscious, grown up individuals, and we realize, and even then, a lot of us are not necessarily aware of half of the fears, the really deep-seated fears that are sitting there. And like you say, so then an event happens in our life, and then that's when the fear comes out, and we just then it's what can we do with that? And going back into your story, Adrian, how did you choose to how did you choose to face that fear? Because it was a long time that you were in this space of uncertainty and insecurity. How did you manage through that? And how did you get to the other side?
It's a really good question. I just pick up on one point before I answer that directly. I think that I remember younger, I was with my aunt, and she just had a baby. I was with her, and she was babysitting us, and a bee came into the room, and I reacted to the bee saying, "Oh no, there's a bee." And I remember what she said to me. She said, "Don't react to the bee, because I don't want to teach the children to be scared of it." It stuck with me, and it really did, because I was thinking, wow, what a revelation. You're right, because we can subconsciously teach our children or ourselves and things that we brought up just from all of those things. And I bring that up because, as you said, we don't realize what's in there. We don't realize until we're faced into that situation. But coming back to your point about getting through, there was a number of things that happened that helped me get through. And right, so let me start by this by saying, fear is there. It wasn't something that happened that just turned off and I didn't have fear. Let me just underline that. With fear, there's many acronyms that people give, evidence appearing real, face everything and run. There are all of these things that come with the word fear, right? And there are emotions that are attached with that. Are there. How did I get? So there's two things that really helped me when I was going through. So obviously I'm a person of faith, so I have, I had to really knuckle down and believe in my faith in God, that this wasn't the end of me and all of these things like that, and that I'm because I believe that we're here created on purpose. Yeah, we're here not by accident, by design. We're here on purpose, and and so you have to kind of reconcile yourself with this, with the notion that this isn't the end of you, and this is only a part of your life. This is only a couple pages or a chapter in your life. It's not the entire story. Yeah, and but when you're in that page, when you're reading that page of the story, it is your entire life. It feels like this is exactly what this is all of your totality. But you have to kind of reconcile yourself with that fact, and that, there's a bigger purpose, there's a bigger happening, and this is going to sow things into you and what have you. Not easy to do, and it's something that you do over a period of time, and it's probably something that you do when you look back as well. Yeah, so I relate that to everybody that's listening, and so without a doubt, I wouldn't have been able to go through it if I didn't have my faith. So a lot of prayer, a lot of meditation, a lot of what I call worship and different things like that. Just real connection with God. That's how it was. That was the underpinning thing. Also, what happened in my life at that period of time is both myself and my wife, we happened to go into some coaching, some life coaching. So we trained to be life coaches. And so at the same time that was happening, we were in a year-long course where we was training to be coaches. So that meant that, one, you had to coach other people and you had to see group sessions, but you're also being coached as well. And so part of that meant that your mind is being rewired, is to describe it. So, you know, your thought patterns, the things that you do, things that you believe, you're analyzing those. You start to coach yourself. Other people coach you. And really, in that period, to have those two underpinning experiences happening at the same time, and which is why obviously I do some coaching now, and which is why it's a real passion of mine, because life happens to all of us. Simple, you know. And if we just call fear, and there's no big fear or small, it's just fear, and it's what it's trying to do is arrest you and stop you and slow you down and take you off focus and not value yourself and all of these things. But it doesn't have to be that way, is what I'm saying. And those are the two real things that underpin how I feel, you know. If it wasn't for that, no, there's no way I would have, I don't think I'd have been as sane or been able to go through some of the things. Now, as I said right at the beginning of this, fear is still there. I was still scared. Absolutely. You know, I was still worried. I still had nightmares. I still, I was still had, you know, little panic attacks and worry attacks and things like that happening. But you have to kind of create a coping mechanism that brings you through those periods. And also, you have to develop activities that, what's the word? Create active action against that fear. And
right, Adrian, can you say
mind, so that's one thing.
Sorry, could you just repeat that last bit again?
Create,
yeah.
No problem. So what I'm saying is that you have to develop mechanisms that help you with action, because one thing about fear is it stops your action. It arrests you. Yeah. Just like how I was arrested when I had the accident. I couldn't go. I had to go with the police. I was handcuffs. But that's what fear wants to do. It wants to slow you down and arrest you and it'll handcuff on your mind and your heart and your actions and your emotions as well, if that makes sense. Yeah. So, but there are ways to develop mechanisms that help you cope with your fear, that actually bring you out of that arrested mode, that state. And it starts, personally, I think, you know, well, let's just give my example. It started with my mind, things that I thought, things that I was worrying about, my heart, because those are the things that were actually arresting me, the thought processes, and then my heart and what I call, you know, my spirit as well, my passions were affected by that, and that's what the debilitating thing about fear is. But you can change your thought process and your mindset, and that helps release you, and that ultimately releases some of your actions. And so, as they say, you know, you have to still face that and go. So I still had to go to court, even though I didn't want to. Even though, you know, when I went to court, I had to prepare for the fact that when I went to trial, they would say guilty or not guilty. And as a consequence of that, that might mean I might have to go to prison that day. You know, that's a real fear. And it was arresting. It was worrying. It was fear. It was scared. And I had all of that emotion. And it doesn't, I'm not going to say a lie that it goes away. But what you can do is you can, you know, you've got mechanisms which you can use. Obviously, I'm talking about prayer. I'm talking about having faith. I'm talking about your breathing. You know, you're talking about energy, you know, mastering your energy, mastering where that energy and your emotions go, what your emotions do. And that conquer fear, what they do is, it's not that they're not scared. It's just that they have a mechanism to deal with it. And a lot of those people have a coach to do that. You know, they get coached in those, because what is the mechanism for you might be slightly different from me, what have you, based upon personality. I'll give you an example. As I said, theatre, right? When you get up on stage, the moment you get on there, you will have nerves. You know, you will have nerves saying, oh, am I going to remember lines and things like that? But you have to do it anyway. And you have to create action. And what happens is, when you step forward and you create those action moves, you will overcome your fear. And sometimes when I'm on stage, I still have fear. My heart is beating, you know, but the more I create action and get into the groove, is easier it gets. Yeah. And that's the thing about rehearsal. And that's the thing about practice. And the same thing with your thoughts. You have to rehearse your thoughts, rehearse your practice, and your emotions even, which mean that you can really try and prepare for some of these situations that you're in.
Adrian,
if this is
I love that. And when you're talking about the theatre piece as an actor on stage, I mean, I'm chuckling to myself, because I've been a public speaker now for a number of years, and I have the same, like probably like 30 seconds before the green light, before I need to start. And so there's that fear, and how we can work through it, how we can dance around it, and how we can keep going forward and not allowing it to arrest us. And I really, and thank you so much for your share earlier, because back in that time, when you were going to court and all that, and you said there were two elements that really, mechanisms that helped you, you know, sustain sanity and still be able to keep going from one day to the next. And so the first one was your faith, your personal faith, and so through prayer, meditation. And the second one was actually the coaching course that you were going on together with your wife. And I see that as resourcefulness and resources. So going back to the faith and meditation piece, that's your resourcefulness. That's your inside strength, your inner strength that is coming from that space of faith. And in fact, faith is an expanded energetic space compared to fear. So I believe that really brought to you a lot of solace when you were in a time of prayer, when you were in a time of meditation. Because you're in more of a space of release, and love and courage, and so that's really nice. That's a lovely sort of a summary of those mechanisms. So your resourcefulness, and the resource was the external coaching course that you were qualifying for, together with also your best friend, I imagine your wife. And so that was a resource as well that helped you. And together, that kept you together. I mean, you know, every time I hear your story, I'm kind of like holding my breath. And honestly, it's such a big, huge story. Yeah, go ahead.
It's intense. I think that, you know, let me be really honest. I mean, I as I said, you know, I believe we're here by design. I don't think we're here alone. Let me say that. You know, I don't think we're here alone in this world, in this universe, all of these. I believe in a God. And I think that part of the faith was that belief. You know, I'm not parallel at the end of that happy. And I think that also the element of the coaching that took place was like another petal on that flower. Yeah. It's another thing that kind of underlined that for me, because I don't believe in accident. And so that came at the perfect time as well. So which is why I think it was orchestrated, because it's what I needed. And I think that as a parent, it's kind of like, when you're a parent, you look at your children, you orchestrate as well some of the situations, the things that stay with them, and you'll give them encouraging words, and you'll teach them A, B, and C, and all of that comes in. And it's vital, because we all need that source. We all need that input into our psyche, our spirit, our mindset, and all of these things as well. But hopefully that's making sense.
Wow. Thank you, Adrian, so much for this, for your share and your story, and deeping dive into what is fear, what does it mean, what does it represent, and the power that we give it.
Yeah.
And so as long as we are in a fear space, we are living in a contracted way. So there's no possible way for us to move. There's no possible way to have those discussions, moments of innovation, moments of creativity, of brainstorming.
Yeah.
So from here, Adrian, we're going into organizations now, because ultimately leading dragons is really about sharing our courageous vulnerability, and sharing the teachers that we had. So in this case, this is one particular story for you, which was a huge teacher for you, a big master. What would you say was the key learning from all of this, and how does that help you in your life today as a consultant?
Very good question. Very, very good question. So there are so many elements. As I said, it's kind of like a kaleidoscope of things that come into your life. Yeah. And wow. Right. So how did it help me? So I had to take on resource, as you said, to staff my weakness. If you think about that as well, that's what people do in the business. You must staff your weaknesses. And so at that time, let me give you some examples. The thing about fear, it comes in waves. Yeah. And sometimes you're feeling on top of the world, and sometimes you're not. And it's based on the thing. And another thing about fear is that some of it is, as I said, is sewn into you from a long time. And you have to, especially with the coaching, I had to look at what was possible. It's because sometimes we can base our ideas and our feelings and what we do around what we think is not possible, or what the worst outcome is. But you have to also doubt your fears as well. And so you have to remember that, just as probably more realistic is that most of the fears that we've had have not actually come to pass. They're just fears that are there. And I'll give you an example. I remember when, coming back to that story, the day after, I was arrested, and I was put in a cell, for 24 hours. And I had, even emotion now, right? I had lawyers telling me, this is really bad, we're not sure what happened. I had there was a junior lawyer that was assigned to my case that was sitting in front of me, not knowing what to do, and looking it up in a little book to try and work out what was going to happen in front of me. All of those fears. And I'm thinking, what is going to happen to me? And I remember I came out, that happened at the weekend, and I came out, it happened on Saturday, and I came out of the cell. They released me, bailed me, it was Sunday evening. came home, see my family, all the emotions and everything like that. The Monday morning, I had to go and do a presentation at work the next day. And it was a presentation at work which we had been planning for the last 6 months, and people were traveling all across the country to come meet to do this. And I remember that I had to get on the train and go all the way up to work and deliver. I was leading the presentation. I had to deliver that. So there you go. So I had all of the fears, all of the days, all of the emotions, everything at the same time. And
wow.
I remember going into that presentation. Yeah, I remember going into that presentation. I didn't feel myself. Yeah, but and I delivered that presentation, and I can say that it went brilliantly. Everybody was like, "This is amazing. I can't believe this." And even my manager said to me, "Adrian, I don't know what happened. I can tell that you was a bit off in the morning, but whatever you did, it was brilliant, you know." And, came through that examples because I had to do it with all the emotions and the nerves and all the bits and pieces, yeah. And another reason why I obviously believe in God, you know, because I didn't believe I didn't have that, could make it through that on my own, and that happened, right? But I use those examples in my life, and especially with the people that I coach or things, because what happens is we carry ourselves and our situations into work. It's us that goes into work, yeah. And also some of our things that we're doing. Maybe you're not working, maybe you have your own company or things like that. But you know, as I said, we need to develop action, and we need to kind of question what it is that we're worried about. And you know, what was going through my mind when I had that meeting? You're not going to do it. You're going to trip over your words. Look what you've just been through. Think about how you feel. Think about what's happening. What's going to happen? All that was in my head at the same time, and I was carrying that. But at the same time, I had to doubt that and say, no, I can do this. No, we've done this. You know, this is not the end of me. I had to doubt. I had that kind of battle going through, and you know, what I want to encourage in people is the fact that, you know, that we carry ourselves, we carry our emotions, our expressions, all of these things that are happening. Everybody has a life, you know, when they're going into work or or they're delivering something, and that comes with us. But we need to work on our mechanisms to develop that. But and that was done, as I said, for a period of time. Don't just suddenly turn over and it happens, but you keep going up, you keep showing up, you keep doing all of these things which I believe that you're created to do, you know, and that's where courage. That's what courage is. Courage isn't the absence of fear or worry or all of things. Courage is actually getting up and doing something when you've got all of these things at the same time. That's courage. Not knowing what the outcome's going to be, not where you are, and that's something that you develop over a period of time. And I'll give you an example. So why I say it's a kaleidoscope. You think about your life, think about things that you've been through. So so I can be on a stage and, you know, how many 100 people or whatever that you're acting in front. Yes, I still have the nerves, but then I have to take that courage and remind myself, look, I'm a meeting with 5 people or 10 people and myself. It's not saying that you won't have fear. You can still have fear. Or I had to look at the strategies, like, for example, when I'm doing speaking or coaching or what have you, the strategies that I use to learn lines and things like that, I use when I'm speaking, when I have a speaking engagement or what have you. And you draw from these areas of your life to build a bigger picture, because you're not just one thing. You know, you're not just work. You're a creative being. You're a person. You're probably a partner to somebody. You're could be a parent, whatever it is, but you've got all of these elements in your life that all draw in there, and I believe they're there by design, as I said, you know, and so, which is why I wear so many hats, because that it's all part of me. It's like, you know, one hat is an arm, another hat is a leg, another hat is a head, and so so there's all of these things that are all part of you, and I don't think you should deny those things that are in you. We should live them out, because they're all vital in who you are and what you bring to this world, if that makes sense, you know. And so, but you know, let me carry on.
Yeah, no, I just, because there's so many, there's a lot of beauty in what you say, and you know, you're saying you have to doubt your fears, and I'm just thinking we're definitely going to have another podcast, especially because I didn't hit the right button at the start, so we missed the first few minutes in the recording. But what I'd love to do is I'd love to invite you again, Adrian. We do have the recording, but it was the first few minutes where, for some reason, I didn't hit the right button. But I really, no problem. Yeah, and I really do. I really loved everything that you shared. Let's just schedule another vidcast next week anyway, because there's so much that we can talk about. And again, there's so many golden nuggets that you've shared, you know, or pieces of wisdom. You talk about, you know, that we need to let go of the outcome in order to move through fear and move into courage. Because courage and the magic happens outside our comfort zones. And in order to step outside our comfort zone, we've got to be ready and willing and go, right, let's go. We don't know what's going to happen. And we're going to be taking some risks. But you know what? Otherwise, we're just going to be sitting in our comfort zones and nothing's going to happen. And we're going to be the same people. We wouldn't be growing. We wouldn't be able to become who we're here to be ultimately. And this is a beautiful.
And as I said, you know, that fear.
Yes, Adrian, please.
I was going to say that fear is arresting. Like, just it's really powerful that we'll be sitting there, and unfortunately, people sit on a lot of their talents, their giftings, and what they do, and their passions and their abilities because of fear, and it's demonstrating there that the arresting fact of it. But to get over that needs a bit of action, tiny little bit of action. Put the one step forward, and then you put the next step. You don't know what the outcome's going to be, and we have to live with the fact that it's real. Yes, we can fail. Yes, we can succeed, but you have to do something.
Yes, and this is a beautiful. Oh, have we lost you? You still there? Yeah, and this is a beautiful wrap up to. This is a beautiful wrap up to the beginning, the sort of the introductory part of the vidcast, where, you know, we go back to water, and water, which is the symbol of leading dragons with the dragon. And why water? Because the leading dragon is the leader that steps into their power and leads with flow. And because can you imagine if we all lived our lives the way water runs in between rocks and mountains? We would be allowing flow and releasing things that don't serve us, and just allowing for opportunities to come, allowing to release things that no longer serve us and fears. And again, it goes back to choice, because how much do we choose to let go, which we need to do, to let go of past relationships, past behaviors, past traumas, past experiences, past narratives, in order to move forward. So, Adrian, yes, go ahead.
I'm going to say, I love what you're saying. We can go into it a bit further. I think what I love about your analogy of water, I love water as well. It's a perfect analogy, because water is a power force. one of the most powerful. You can't stop water; it will get anywhere. And also, water does something which we need to do as well. Water knows how to change states depending on what it's doing. Yeah, so you can have water that flows. You can have water that's invisible, which is in the air. You can have water which is rain, which is in the clouds up at the top. You've got water that can freeze. You can water it changes states depending on what the task is, you know. So and so if we understand the state that we're in and we can change states, it helps us achieve the state that we can do. So, but we can go into that another time. There's so many powerful things I can share about
I love that, Adrian. Water changes state depending on the task at hand. Okay, this is going to be the topic for our next vidcast. Right. Adrian, thank you so much for your shares. Thank you for your tons of pieces of wisdom and insight.
Thank you for having me.
And it was such a pleasure to have you on the show. And honestly, I'd love to have you back. And I wish you a great rest of the day. A great rest of the day and a great week, Adrian. Lots of love. Take care.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'll see you soon.
See you soon. Bye, Adrian.